So recently I watched Silence of the Lambs for God knows how many times now, and I really enjoyed it, as I have done every other time. And I also watched the prequel, which is Red Dragon, and in some ways I actually feel that Red Dragon is a slightly better film, or some of the characters were a little bit better in Red Dragon than compared to Silence of the Lambs. That's not to say that Silence of the Lambs is a bad film. It's not. Both Sir Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster are fantastic in the film, but to me there are a few little things that I prefer in Red Dragon compared to Silence of the Lambs. So let's get into the first one. The main bad guy. Now, the main bad guy in Silence of the Lambs is Buffalo Bill, and yes, he comes across as a very sort of creepy, crazy guy. However, there's very little else to him. So, yes, he's someone you don't want to be anywhere near, that's for sure. But there's no sort of real backstory to him, really. And to me, it just comes across as just a fairly generic, crazy guy. Whereas I find that Francis Dolarhyde, who is the main bad guy in Red Dragon and has that huge tattoo on his back, has a little bit more about him. Again, he's a sort of creepy guy who does all sorts of horrible crimes, but also you find out a little bit more about his own personal backstory, in the sense that he actually suffered abuse when he was a child, and it starts to get to the point where you think, well, maybe that abuse was what caused him to be so messed up as an adult. And in some ways you actually feel a little bit of sympathy for him, despite the fact that he is the primary villain in that movie. Now, the other thing as well is basically Jodie Foster's character, Clarice Sterling, the sort of amateur FBI agent. She isn't really under any threat from Hannibal Lecter at any point, and even the character herself is self-aware in the fact that she says, I know Hannibal Lecter won't come after me, which is at the point where he actually escaped in the film. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. Whereas right at the beginning of Red Dragon, Will Graham, played by Ed Norton, is an FBI detective, and he's attacked by Hannibal Lecter when he goes to his house for some help, but realises that he is Hannibal the cannibal that they'd been talked about in the press. And at that point, Hannibal Lecter tries to kill him, leaves him for dead essentially, but he manages to survive. And later on in the film, he ends up having no choice but to get the help of Hannibal Lecter. And to me, that's a really interesting twist, because it's quite clear Hannibal Lecter wants to kill him, and I'm sure Ed Norton's character, Will Graham, wants to kill him as well. Whereas I never got that from Silence of the Lambs. Clarice Sterling was never really in danger from Hannibal Lecter. He admired her, basically. So, yeah, in some ways, I think Red Dragon's a better movie. But that's not to discredit Silence of the Lambs at all. I still think that's a great film. I just think some of the characters are a little bit better fleshed out in Red Dragon. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. This has been the Gabriel Sin, and I'll catch you next time.